Can you say on live to see? So I'm getting this set right now. I'll make it up, send it, make a note. Right now.
Correct.
I will take it from you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Start with that. Thank you. When we were all settled.
How are you?
I'm good. And then this. Yep, when you're ready to start. Let me fix this for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I got another thing.
Yeah. They all. Thank you.
But thank you for being here.
We need to.
There's different ones here.
Jim, Jim, what color is your child? I'm gonna mention.
It's kind of a grayish blue, like really dark gray with a blue
Interior?
color. Interior is black. It's all dark, really dark.
I'm so happy. I want to see.
It's been a while.
I have a 2019 too, the Cadillac, but too many things. I feel like an old person.
Escalade,
What?
Escalade.
Yeah, it's too much. It stops for you. It drives you. I'm like, I just want to drive it.
I know.
No action.
Yep.
We're getting too much.
I know. It's too
Well,
smart.
actually,
Seriously.
since, you know.
I like Bluetooth, so that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm good. I can drive it.
And
Mine,
then.
mine has that auto stop.
I get this close from like a fence. It's like, what the heck? Like, I can do this. Are we ready? Yeah.
Ready?
Are we ready, Tammy? Ready? Not quite. Oh.
I have no patience tonight. No
Okay.
patience.
How you feeling?
I'm 22 days in and I can't breathe. So just tells you my wife had it and she
Yeah,
was
I
done
remember.
in 3 days.
Really?
The vaccine doesn't work. It's not a vaccine, it's a therapy.
Okay.
Amy had it 3 days.
That's how my wife was.
Daughter had it 2 days.
It nailed me. I tell you,
Is it your second time?
first time.
Public participation
It's a man-made disease. It just doesn't do what it normally does. You know?
during the public hearing. You want to be called on during the public hearing?
Oh, I was totally vaccinated.
I know that's the thing. It's not. You should never. Ready?
Yeah. Sure, if it was number 5 or a different.
Yes.
J, he's got J.
Oh, where did he go?
Yep,
Is he under the desk?
but I'm just making sure he's got item J.
Hi, Bill.
Probably supposed to be 5.
Where did he go? Clay. I don't know. Clay. I love Clay so much. There's Clay. We found him. Sit down. We lost you.
I'm rushing.
Gonna have to do a code blue, or code gray on you. Not yet.
It wouldn't matter. They would know what it meant.
You be in the street, you'll be fine.
If they
I'm
get
good.
with my nickname.
Time being 7:07, we're reconvening into open session. Town council, no action to be taken from the closed session. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a presentation. Mary Freeman with the Salvation Army is here to make a presentation regarding the Red Kettle Challenge.
Yes, hi, it's wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you all so much for having us. Good evening. I am Mary Freeman. I'm the Community Relations Director for Collin and Denton counties for the Salvation Army of North Texas. And this is my colleague, Charlie Chapman, and she serves as our volunteer specialist. And together we manage the whole Red Kettle Challenge for 2021. I particularly want to thank Mayor Bill Scheer and city leaders and Tammy Dixon, who did a lot of support with coordinating everything, for participating in the 2021 Mayor's Red Kettle Challenge. We are pleased to present this certificate of appreciation to your team for helping the challenge raise much needed funds for the Salvation Army of Louisville's year-round programs addressing family instability caused by poverty, homelessness, and addiction. Your efforts provided a total of $964.16 during bell ringing on Saturday, December 11th, and you were supported by 10 volunteers with over 7 hours of in-person bell ringing coverage. We want to especially recognize your creativity in providing signage and a festive atmosphere at your bell ringing site at the Kroger on FM 407. Your team ranked number 2 in volunteer participation for in-person bell ringing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bartonville came in 3rd in dollars raised in the Louisville area, which is outstanding because all of the funds your team raised were solely obtained through your in-person bell ringing efforts. We very much appreciate your answering Louisville Mayor's Gilmore challenge to provide hope and help to neighbors in need. And I'll take just 1 minute here. What does the Salvation Army of Louisville do? It helps hardworking neighbors like Vanessa, who was struggling to care for her daughter and pay medical bills. Unfortunately, Vanessa lost her job and healthcare insurance, which when the agency she worked for lost its funding. This created a huge crisis for Vanessa because her teenage daughter, Tia, experienced serious medical issues that required hospitalization. Vanessa drained her 401k to pay medical bills, and thankfully her daughter did improve, but Vanessa ended up worse than broke. She was on the verge of becoming homeless. This is her quote. "I have never asked for help from anyone, never been on the government system or programs of any type. But thanks to a caring community and friends like you here in the town of Bartonville, the community rallied and Vanessa's life was transformed. The Salvation Army helped pay Vanessa's rent and utilities for 6 months, gave her job referrals, and provided training in financial literacy, budgeting, and nutrition. She also received regular groceries from the food pantry. This support helped Vanessa and Tia remain in their home until Vanessa could get a job and get back on her feet." She shared this quote, "I was recently hired full-time," she said with a smile. "That's a plus, and I owe it all to the help I received from the Salvation Army. We continue to see increasing demands for our services and anticipate that your support will help to provide more than 124,000 meals through our food pantry program alone, 34,000 midday meals, and shelter for emergency shelter during the cold weather months. But more importantly, you will provide hope for neighbors like Vanessa. So we look forward to your participation next year in the Salvation Army of Louisville, and we really hope you will take the time to perhaps come by and visit our Louisville Center and meet the officers, Captains Ben and Charles C. Godwin, who unfortunately just couldn't be here this evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and may God richly bless you.
Thank you. Public participation. If anyone here wishes to speak on a matter not listed as a public hearing, please make sure to provide for public appearance card to the town secretary now. If you wish to speak on either agenda item tonight, or you have that opportunity during the item's public hearing. Appointed representatives, Jim, Denton County ESD.
Thank you. As always, thank you for the opportunity of serving and working with the fire department, the fire district, and the emergency service district. Give you a brief report. It's going to be pretty succinct tonight. This evening. Incidents for the month of October: 139 EMS, 107 for the fire department, total of 246. Lights and siren running out the door, 107, a minute, 7 seconds. Response time from running out the door to arrival at the scene, 7 minutes, 29 seconds. This sort of messed up the report, but I was able to pull out a few more distinctive measurements here for us to consider tonight. The ESD is the actual, incorporated runs, which came up to 654. So compared, it's a little bit better than the 729. But what's even more impressive is the Bartonville run at 547. So that's good. That's great. Incidents 12, and I listed all the other towns and communities below that. They changed up the report, but it's going to go back to the old method because I don't have the incident types, but I just have the runs, and that's all. For the overall breakdown of what the ESD has been doing, it's listed down below for you. On the back page, the big deal was the fire truck Santa. They were up for 12 nights. My gosh, when they hit Barton, everybody went, "What's burning down?" Nobody knew about it. Not everybody ran out and had a good time. It was fun. But one note of notoriety, or one point of notoriety, one of our residents, Dr. Justin Northeim, he was appointed as the head ER director for the state of Texas. He oversees 24 different fire districts for us throughout this area. If there's any way, I think we ought to somehow recognize him as some sort of a proclamation or whatever because of his accomplishments. I mean, that man, a busy man, he's done a lot of great work. So it's just comment from him. But other than that, any questions? And thank you for the
Jim, I
opportunity.
got a question.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
there-
Yes,
Is there
sir.
anything you need from this council to better support? Because you've been doing this for years for us, and we're very appreciative of
I just
the
enjoyed
work
being
you've
visiting
done.
the people.
Do you need anything from us?
You get to meet a lot of important people. You really do, because it's some of the meetings, the commissioners show up, the judges show up, the governor shows up, whatever. Very meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Police report, chief.
Mayor Pro Tem, council, staff. I did something a little different this time. I think there was a question about maybe some year-end totals or maybe some comparisons as to activity. So that's what those graphs are. I'll start with the cost for service for December. Officer initiated totals. I didn't give you those graphs this time, but I'll give you the numbers. Officer initiated totals were 118. Of that, 45 of those were traffic stops. The total, bringing the total to 235, which 116 left over was basically report calls. Compared to November, we had 294 in November. Crashes, we actually had more this month. Our last month, we had 8 of those. We didn't have any injuries. We had one that had minor injuries, but other than that, there were no injuries reported. So on to the comparisons there. What you see is there's 2 different groups of offenses. It's Group A and Group B, and that's what we report to the FBI annually. So kind of see those numbers there. If you see anything that kind of jumps out, certainly feel free to ask. There are 3-year comparisons, 2019, 20, and 21. You can see some things went up, some things went down. You see any big jumps there or have any questions, feel free to ask.
Chief, do you feel crime and police activities are increasing in Bartonville exponentially? Or do you feel we are in a good spot?
I think we're in a good spot. I mean, I don't see, if you look at the numbers there, they definitely speak for themselves. I mean, the population is increasing, so that's going to drive those numbers to go up a little bit, obviously.
But in your professional opinion, we are in a good spot. Okay,
As
thank you.
pretty much most of the surrounding
Oh,
agencies are.
and I think that's a testament to you and your staff. So
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Also supplied you with a 3-year crash comparison. You see the number of crashes, 2019, 2020, 2021. You see it, they jumped up quite a bit, 20 to 21. And again, I think that has to do with the daytime population going up. It is increasing. Then the 3-year traffic contact comparison, you can see that's traffic stops, 19, 20, and 21. I think it went down this year, and I think that's indicative of us being short-staffed. All right, so with that, flock reads again, right about 500,000. 504, 223 on the license plate readers for December, and 533, 336 for November. So staying pretty steady. With that, that's it. If there's any questions?
Thank you. I was just going to thank you for this comparison of these 3 years. This is very helpful.
It's great.
Yeah, Chief, Chief, I have a question. I'm just curious, what is your opinion? What's your thoughts on this? On if you look on the drug offenses versus 2019 and 2020,
Which one again?
yes, on drug offenses?
Yeah.
And of course, at 2020, that's when COVID. Do you see any of these figures in here that you would relate back to that time of being isolated?
No, I think it had to do with staffing. It had to do with some officers' activities. Between certain officers do certain things different than other officers. Sometimes they find more drug offenses than others. So I wouldn't relate it. I wouldn't. It doesn't have a correlation with COVID.
Yeah, I was just curious as to whether any environmental conditions would have, in your opinion, would be reflected in any of these rises and decreases in crime.
I don't think so. I think the only thing that it would have had an impact on would have been traffic contacts. And that actually went up. So.
Thank you. Interim Town Administrator Corey.
Start off with the quarterly investment report of going out of order from the agenda. It speaks for itself pretty well. If you have any specific questions, I can speak to that, but it's a standard format that you've seen in previous years. Interest earned for this quarter is $38 to $33.
Can you move your microphone? We can barely.
Sorry, yes, we're trying to share that one here. Okay, so moving on to the monthly financial report. This is the similar version of what you were presented last year. So, or sorry, not last year, well, I guess it was last month at the last meeting. So the first slide goes through revenues individually, sales taxes for the first quarter. So this would be October through December, just over 20%. That's about what we expect that time of year. Each quarter is not just a standard 25% of the year. So this is right on target based on the budget amendment that you approved last month. Property taxes, we've collected about 40% of budgeted revenue as of December 31st, which is again right on target. You'll see a huge jump in that next month for January collections. Franchise fees are 28% of the budget as of the end of December. The big thing that I'd like to point out is development related revenue. So this is for all of the construction inspection fees that you amended the budget to include last month, as well as fees collected for development review committees, DUPs, variances, all of the development related applications. We've received 84% of the budgeted amount for the year as of the end of December. So significant amount of money, over $120,000 of that, which is the majority of it is the construction inspection fees. So that'll go up, but it's going to go up more slowly for the rest of the year because we won't receive any more of those inspection fees since we've received them all for all three of the subdivisions that are going in now.
Hey, Corey, have you seen the activity around those particular items decrease? I know heading into the end of last year, it was super busy. Is it slowing down at all, or is it maintained? Is it getting
The answer is
busy?
no.
Is it getting busier?
So we had a little slowdown period where I thought, well, we've gotten the 3 subdivisions through. It was really hectic for a while. Now things are slowing down, and then we just received a
picking
bunch
up
of
again?
different
Okay.
submissions. So
Okay.
we do have several things that are kind of in the early stages that will not be anything that you'll be acting on probably next month or anything, but they're in the process. So there will still be additional revenue for this
But
category.
whether we act on it or not means you guys are still busy. That was my question. So thank
That
you.
is an accurate
Okay,
statement.
thank you.
Municipal court fines are again slightly lower than budgeted for that portion of the year. I wouldn't recommend any additional change to the budget at this point, because the hope would be that once we have the new officers on board, there is more activity with new officers during their training phase, and once they're out on their own, usually see a little bit higher revenue from tickets at that point. So I wouldn't adjust that right now. Okay, moving on to page 3. This is just an overview of all of the general fund expenditures. Each department, the way that the budget is set up here, there's an administration department, which is really everything that's not police and court or transfer. So it includes your engineering and other things that are not typically part of the administration department. That's broken down a little bit more on the next page in the administration department expenditures. Contracted services, you will see are it's a pretty big jump from the prior month with $68,000 worth of expenses in that month. That's a number of different things, but the biggest piece of it, about half of that, is due to an engineering invoice for multiple months that we paid at once. They had some changes in their, I guess, invoicing system, and part of that will be moved back to the prior fiscal year by the auditors. We just can't at this point move it back to the last year. So that will be adjusted at some point during the audit. The only other thing I'd point out in administration, the amounts for salary and benefits will be significantly under what is the budgeted portion of that year. And for contracted services, it will be over. And those are going to just be a balance that at some point you'll have another budget amendment to swap from one category to the other. But that's typically, most of that is based on contracted administrator position. So if that were a staff position, it's not going to increase the budget overall in the department, but it may need to move from one category to the other, just based on what portion of the year is contracted versus staff. The final slide for the police department is under budget pretty much in every area. That's because of the vacant positions with staffing. That extends to not just salary and benefits, but also to maintenance for fuel, training, all the other related costs with having people in the department. So a couple of things that are higher than budget are due to one-time payments for contracted services like dispatch, but also for the ticket writer software that you approved and was already purchased earlier this year. That's all I have on the monthly finance report, unless you have any questions about any budgeted items.
Do you have any questions?
I have a question, and this pertains to DCAD on the, with the exemptions that are out there. When will that final number be given, since taxes are paid or due on the 31st? Do we have a number as to what the final tab is on collection of the taxes on property that had filed for ag exemption? I know it's last month, it was still out. The question, do we have that number?
I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look after. Are you just asking, does the town know what percentage is outstanding for payments that are ag exempt properties? I don't know that off the top of my head, so I'll have to look into that. Yeah, we could look into that a little bit more, do a little bit of digging. Before we move on to anything else, I do have an update here on the.
I got one thing
Sure.
on, and I don't expect it to be you or Tammy, but there's been a lot of talk with Denton Cat and what they're doing with ag. And there's been discussion, and they got blown up because they tried to, do what they thought was right, whatever. Do we need to have someone here participating in that? Are you guys looped in enough? Do you feel, and again, I don't even know if this is the right question for you guys. I don't know. I just know Denton Cat's making some decisions in the next several months, which could have a lot of impact on our residents in Bartonville if we need to have somebody more tightly tuned into it outside of you guys. And I don't know, I'm just asking. And I'll open it up to the council. I don't know.
Yeah, we are not going to, as staff, tell you that you need to be more involved in making comments toward the appraisal district one way or another, but if you would like to add it as an agenda item for you as a council to discuss that item and see if you would like to take any sort of position on anything, to make a statement as a body, you could do that.
We could add that to an February agenda if you'd like to discuss
Uh,
that further.
I would really like to do that because I think it impacts our,
We'll talk about
While
it.
we were there, they did state that they were gonna form and bring in people to a committee to seek more information, and I think we might tap upon Gloria McDonald. She was there in attendance on that as well. So
We can send out some additional information, but
Okay.
since it's not on the agenda tonight, I'd rather
That's
not
just
go
not
into it
too
too much.
much
But
agenda
We will send out all the information that we have to you and add it as a future agenda item.
thank you, Corey.
thank you.
But before we move on, that's kind of the biggest update that we have here today. In March of last year, the American Recovery Plan Act was signed into law, which provided a large amount of relief, 350 billion that went to state, local, and tribal governments. And of that, Bartonville's allocation was just over $440,000. There's a number of categories that this funding can be used for, and most cities are using it toward utility infrastructure, which is not something that Bartonville would spend the money on. So one of the categories that is allowable for expenditures of this funds is for expansion of broadband services. So Tammy worked last year with even some other cities to set up a number of different conference calls, met with Frontier as they were coming into some of the newer subdivisions in town. Because there's a section of Bartonville that does not have any high-speed internet. It's over 40 lots, and there's just no high-speed internet, even though it's fully surrounded with high-speed internet. So the goal was to try to come up with some way to use those funds to help subsidize an expansion into this subdivision. Nothing really happened with Frontier. We couldn't get any traction there. And then eventually started meeting with Charter Spectrum. Had a number of meetings, and many different conversations. And we finally did receive pricing for the subdivision at just over 75,000 for the entire expansion to all of the streets in the subdivision. So it's something that we'll be bringing to you for future discussion. But to put it into perspective, one resident in that subdivision obtained service directly, and their cost to run the lines to their home it was over $19,000. So most of the people in the neighborhood could not afford to bring that service to their home, and that's why they were reaching out to the town to see what we could do to help. So we expected that cost to be a lot higher when it came back in at 75,000 for the entire subdivision. We definitely want to put that on your radar and bring that up for future discussion at the next meeting. At that point, the lines would be run in the right of way in the whole subdivision. The homeowners would then tie into the system at the cost that anybody would in any private neighborhood. So right now, I mean, those costs can change, but right now that cost is $49.99 plus $9.99 for internet for the installation. So there's not some multiple $1,000 expansion cost to the homeowners if this were to take place. They also did mention that they identified another small area in Bartonville that didn't have high-speed internet service. And so we'll follow up with them on that and see if there's some other area that we're not aware of.
So that resident paid the 19,000
Yes.
and they can't be reimbursed. We can't. Okay.
I don't believe so.
Well, thank you for the many phone calls because we all understand dealing with telecommunications and cable people and all of that. So that's an awesome call. I mean, that's an awesome, good job.
It was an exciting day for us.
The neighborhood has been asking for years since I've
And
been
they should
working
have
here.
it.
They have not,
Yeah.
like, if you all have Frontier, they can't even get Frontier. They've not, it's, I sent an email, it's like, yeah, it's so slow. I finally get down, the agenda packet downloaded. Started last night.
Oh,
And we were
gosh.
getting our communications. So it served to help them.
Yeah.
Well, they've been on DSL, some of them, that
Yeah.
is not going to be supported any longer, and some are using satellite internet, which is not really a good reliable option. So I'm sure that many of you have had the opportunity to work from home some over the last couple of years. And when that was brought up to a lot of these residents, they just couldn't even do that because
Yeah.
they didn't have.
And schooling, I mean,
reliable
anything.
internet.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So what's next? What's next?
So we will be working with charter to develop, I guess, all of the details, make sure that they have every lot served in their plan, and we'll do some reviews, and then that I guess we'll go through legal on an agreement. Because we would have to agree to pay that cost. So they know our timeline. They know that we're really excited about hoping to move forward quickly on this with the next council meeting. And now, don't hold them to this, but their estimate was that after a contract were to be approved, that they would potentially have this done in 3 to 4 months. So it's not going to happen overnight, but it's not a multiple year-long wait that we have to wait for. So
Is there an expiration date on the funds?
yes, but it's quite a ways out.
Okay.
It's 2024
Oh, okay.
to speak to
So we can
the costs.
see them in that.
We have to submit a report, but it doesn't mean that we have to have allocated the funds yet. We just have to tell what we have allocated.
Where all those funds, the amount that they spent.
Perfect.
Thank you for looking
That's
into
awesome.
that.
Appreciate
Appreciate
you
it.
staying on that.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Corey.
Then I guess that's all of the updates. Oh, spring cleanup, I'm sorry. That's because we were gonna talk about that. The spring cleanup coming up in April. We'll talk about the date.
We're looking at April 9th for the spring cleanup. So make sure if that's our first date for the choice, the church, the facility is available, and Waste Connections. So if that date's good with you, we'll go ahead and get it on the calendar.
Same church,
Yes, we'll do the
drive
church.
through, the
Yes.
whole thing where you're a rock star and you make all this happen and
It's a
everybody
team.
loves. You're the
The
star.
rest of the team will be out
Let's
there.
not, hey, let's not sugarcoat this. You're the
No.
star with this. So church, we drive through,
Yes.
everybody.
Tonight is just to get the lockdown of the
Okay.
date, and if we want to have a discussion, I know a lot of people have been asking about brush and different ideas, and if I have ideas, we can put that as an update
Okay.
and a discussion item on the next agenda.
Okay. Thank you. It's a big deal for us, so thank you.
Welcome.
Anything else from that administration? No? Okay. Consent agenda. This agenda consists of non-controversial housekeeping items required by law. Items may be approved with a single motion. Items may be removed from the consent agenda by any council member by making such a request prior to motion and vote on the consent agenda. Item number 1, consider approval of December 14th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Number 2, consider approval of resolution ordering a general election on May 7th, 2022 for purpose of electing a mayor and 2 council members, place 2 and place 4 for 2-year terms each, and providing for joint service contract with Denton County. Item number 3, consider approval of resolution amending the Personnel and Administrative Regulations Manual, Chapter 4, Section 4.01, Health Insurance. Do I have a motion? Second.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Regular item, site plan amendment, the Bartonville Town Center. Next item is a public hearing to consider a site plan amendment for Bartonville Town Council to identify the location of proposed new wall sign with illumination. The property is located at 2648 FM 407 Bartonville, Texas. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 5-0 at its January 5th, 2022. Staff?
This item is a site plan amendment for the entirety of the Bartonville Town Center. But the intent is really just because a specific business going in would like to place a new sign on the building. It's an illuminated wall sign, and the town's ordinance doesn't allow for illuminated wall signs without an approved mention of that in a site plan. So if a new business came in with a site plan and indicated that they were going to have an illuminated wall sign, then it could be approved. Otherwise, we don't have the authority as staff to approve it. However, if you drive through the Bartonville Town Center, if you have ever been at night, you've likely noticed that most of the signs are illuminated. That's just something that was missed. It doesn't seem like there's any opposition to continuing to have illuminated wall signs in that area. You do already have restrictions in place that help to protect residential areas for illuminated wall signs if they were to go in near residential, to make sure that they're shielded and that sort of thing. This is less light and illumination than most of the lights that are in place there now. So they're not asking for some bright new big sign. Were it up to me in unlimited time for this business, I would have brought this to you as a discussion item to consider amending the ordinance to allow for illuminated wall signs with the restrictions that are in place. Specifically in the zoning district, because that's just really the precedent that's been set. Most of the businesses have illumination. Really, there's illumination of signs all over town. So it doesn't seem like they're asking for anything that's out of the ordinary, or out of the norm of what's kind of been happening with businesses in town. So the reason that we brought this before you with the site plan rather than an ordinance update was really just for timing purposes. I was afraid if we got into that conversation, it would take longer and we'd want to set different restrictions and it might take several months. And this is a business that's looking to get started to plan their sign and get ready to get open. They're working on their finish out right now. So it's for the barrel, which is going in the location of previously grapes to wine. So after having this discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission, they didn't have any specific problem with this site plan to add the sign, but did have some thoughts for other things for us to consider in a future revision of the ordinance to accommodate for somebody to be able to put in a sign without going through this lengthy public hearing process.
So if I summarize, we'll address our lack of clarity on this issue down the road. This fits everything we've done before. We don't need to hold them up. So let's kind of do it. Is that fair?
That's our recommendation.
Okay.
Applicant presentation.
Don't know that we have the applicant here for this.
Does anyone, at this time, we'll open the public hearing, time being 7:39. Anyone to speak? Does anyone want to speak in favor? Does anyone to speak in opposition? Time being 7:40, we'll close the public hearing. Discussion?
You fit?
To the proposal, and by looking at the pictures and the presentation, I went down and looked at the building and
Yeah, I mean, if we've been doing this before, the fact that we maybe need, it sounds like we're going to address this going forward long term, then yeah, I've got no issue.
We have a motion.
Close public hearing or we motion.
It's already been closed.
Should we approve this agenda?
Second? All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion passes. Item number 5. Zoning ordinance amendment equestrian center. The next item is public hearing to hear public comment and consider proposed amendments to the town of Bartonville zoning ordinance related to the equestrian center regulations. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 4-1 at its January 5th, 2022 meeting. The intent this evening is to hear public comment and to continue the public hearing in the February meeting so that the town council can take into consideration all resident feedback. Staff?
Just want to kind of echo what Mayor Pro Tem had to say. I think that we obviously are aware that there's a lot of interest in this item. We've received some comments and we can tell by the gathering here, we don't normally have this much attendance at our meeting. So it's very apparent that there's a lot of interest in this item and I don't think anybody here wants to make any decisions quickly. And so I think we're excited to hear what everybody has to say and hope to work with you all, with some of the stakeholders and legal counsel to try to make sure that all the concerns are addressed and that we don't pass an ordinance that doesn't meet the needs of the town. So I don't know if you want to let Mr. Voss, the town attorney, kind of talk about the history about the Equestrian Center Committee, or if you'd like to hear any of the background or have any questions about that process or the planning and zoning public hearing.
Sure. whatever.
Well, essentially, council, after the committee was formed, there was an interruption because of COVID, so it was not hardly any meetings. But committee met and met several times to review the ordinances in the town that deal with equestrian centers. And so the focus was to see what could be improved upon, what needed to be clarified, what needed to be jettisoned. And so there was a review of ordinance provisions from various municipalities around the area, and to review the language that was in there. And really the main focus was to try to clear things up because there were some inconsistencies in the old language. And so that was sort of the focus and the goal overall. So anyway, after many meetings, then at the Planning and Zoning Commission, there was a lot of discussion there. And so there were a couple of changes that were suggested by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So what you have in the packet with you is a couple of documents. One is a red line that is a comparison of existing ordinances with the suggested changes that came out of the ad hoc committee's process. The other document is a draft ordinance that actually incorporates those changes into the ordinance so that anyone who wanted to see what that would actually look like in the town code could take a look at what those red line changes actually would look like in the town ordinances. As I think Mayor Pro Tem, you said, that the idea tonight is that with a lot of input from citizens, which we've gotten both in writing and I anticipate will be also verbally expressed, I recommend that we also keep the public hearing open after all the comments have been received, and then move to postpone it to next month. And that will give me an opportunity to look at whatever legal issues are involved and come up with a way to explain whatever those are to you and provide that for you at the next meeting. So whoever, when we get to that point, I've actually drafted up a motion for someone to read to do that. So that's ready to go. But really, that's just kind of a background of it. I think there was a lot of input. There was a lot of give and take and, consideration of things. But obviously, the public hearing process was what this was all geared to occur anyway. So it sounds like we're ready for that.
Gloria McDonald, your vice chair, I guess, of the P and Z, would you like to speak a few minutes, please, about regarding the questions that we had in the letters?
Maria McDonald, 1418 Gibbons Road South. Pardon me. I read all the letters that were forwarded, and I spoke today to a number of people on the phone. And I think one of the things, and I may be wrong, you guys, that's okay if you come up and say she's crazy, but my impression is part of the angst is that there wasn't a recognition that a lot of what's really in here, it's not brand new. It's things we've already been doing, things that were in different areas of our ordinances. We had a definition for equestrian centers that ended up with someone with commercial property or somebody like me who has a 4-stall barn, and I never did anything commercial, but I qualified the way the ordinance is now to be a non-conforming commercial barn. And things like that are very confusing for people looking at the ordinance, preparing for what they want to do if it's commercial to come in here. And so we did a lot of cleanup of things like that. Probably the best thing I could also mention is that we took some of the things when it comes to P&Z that every single time we do a COP or CUP, we put the same things in there. Well, it doesn't make any sense to put them in there where people don't know ahead of time. So for example, if someone is going to do a commercial barn and they want to park trailers someplace, we had nothing in there to tell them that we do have some issues about where they might be put. So if they don't know ahead of time, they spend a lot of money with somebody to lay out how they want things to be done. And then they come in and we say, well, in the CUP, you can't park it on the property line right up against where somebody's smaller home is or smaller property. So within this new ordinance, much is clarified, much is put out like those kind of things where it's right there where anyone who comes to the town and says, we want a commercial barn, it's right there and they know ahead of time. So when they're making their plans, they actually know that ahead of time. So, you know, there are probably going to be some things when people speak to you that they will want to, you know, tweak, maybe hours, or that they have questions about. But I do want you and them to understand that a lot of what we did through this process was pull everything together so that people understand commercial, understand non-commercial, and hopefully that will help in the long term. I know that there will be questions and I'll be here if you ask me. On the other hand, Ed was with us every step of the way, and so he can answer them as well as I can. But that's probably the best I could at least kind of lay some groundwork. Ed, did I miss anything?
I think that's a good summary.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it. Okay, time being 7:49, we'll open the public hearing. The town received written testimony from Siobhan O'Brien on Porter Road in opposition from Greg Peck, 150 Hidden Oaks, and Aaron Hudson, 687 Sandy Lane, Flower Mound. Do we have anyone that wants to speak in favor? Anyone that wants to speak in opposition? I think I have a stack of people here. Jim Langford? Please state your name and address, please.
Frankfurt, 1044 East Jeter Road, Bartonville, Texas. My main concern is that I don't believe the general public, and it may be my fault that I haven't gone out and sought what was being said, what was being looked at. But all of a sudden, we have this zoning ordinance change that's going to affect anyone with horses. And, you know, we moved out here in 1987. We've seen a lot of changes, but the rural part that has been so talked about years and years and years, you know, it seems like we're going to commercial versus, you know, people having fun with horses. I think that we will qualify as private. We've never charged for anything. We do have horses. My wife has horses. Our son is a elementary school teacher in Louisville, and at least once a year they bring a school bus out so that the special needs kids can have a chance to get to know animals and such. Now, if that's going to be commercial, then we just won't do that anymore, and we'll tell them that, well, the town of Bartonville doesn't allow it. So, like I said, my concern is the lack of information about this. And it sounds like you're going to postpone it till next month and have more information on it, which I do appreciate. But I'm just a little concerned that we're talking about changing something that has been fundamental in Bartonville for so many years.
And thank you, Jim, for bringing that up. This will not affect anyone that currently has an equestrian center. This is for new residents. Correct?
That's right.
It's for new residents.
It's perspective on it.
Yeah. Okay. Or a high tower?
1757 Bridlefoot. I have an equestrian business now, so you just said this doesn't affect us. And I would like to say that we take a lot of effort to not disturb the people around us. And we try to be very, aware of that not everybody likes the things that go with horses. And I think a lot of people here probably do the same thing. And we were concerned because we didn't know if these changes affected what we do, and some of it's probably a good idea, some of the changes, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't just get run over. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Greg McMillan?
My name is Greg McMillan. Address is 1310 Gibbons Road South. And my wife and I purchased the property in March of last year. We purchased it for two reasons: as a retirement home and our daughter rodeos. And we wanted a place that she could operate out of to take care of her horses, go to the rodeos, that type of thing. So those are our primary reasons for purchasing the property. The facility that's on the property is more than 5 stalls. We didn't build the barn, but my concern is that it's just not clarification of what the current requirements are for commercial. It's redefining commercial. So we feel like the goalposts are getting moved on us. We purchased this property with an intended use, private use, and now we may be subject to these rules, but that kind of goes to clarification of the grandfathering. Are we grandfathered in? If we go to sell the property, then the next party is not, or it stays grandfathered in for marketability. I'm not sure. Do we know? We don't know. Okay.
Of course we know.
Okay.
And that is, whatever is in existence stays in existence. And it's a use. And until that use is changed, it stays with the land. Doesn't matter who owns it.
Okay. So my place is grandfathered in with the current use. Okay. Okay. Well, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie Pisani? Hopefully I didn't screw your name. Oh, okay, thank you. David Gilchrist?
My name is David Gilchrist, 1849 Bridlefoot Road. I guess I'd like to speak to you from two different aspects here tonight. Not only am I a resident of Bartonville, but I'm also an equine veterinarian. And I would explain that because, to be clear, based on some of the stuff I'm reading, I'm not sure everyone understands what that even means based on some of the zoning changes you're making. An equine veterinarian is someone that just treats horses, okay? You have here, as part of your definitions within that, you have that the definition of an equine animal activity is basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, is a veterinarian that treats a horse for medical treatment for one reason or another, okay? Further down then, when you go to some of the other changes, you say an equine animal activity is something that occurs between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Now, anyone that has horses knows they don't go by a schedule. You know, they don't make an appointment, go to the dentist at 10, they're up by 11 o'clock and they drink their Starbucks. It doesn't happen. Most of the emergency cases we would see for horses, they're termed emergency for a reason, because they operate out of the normal operating hours that you have stated in this. And again, what some of the most biggest emergency treatments for horses, one would be, say, colic treatment. Okay, I've euthanized 2 horses yesterday for colic alone in the last 24 hours. Okay. You have also mentioned breeding of horses as an animal activity. Most horses foal, they're nocturnal, they foal during the nighttime. So under this zoning change, if my mare is foaling, I have one mare and she's foaling. 3 o'clock in the morning, I have to go out there, turn on the lights to assist the foaling. my neighbor can call and I can be having to defend myself here at a meeting of why I cannot have my one brood mare. Okay? There's multiple instances I could bring up that wouldn't conform to your 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the terms of the medical treatment of horses. You have the transport of horses. If I can't go to a barn and treat a horse after 7 p.m. or 7, I tell the person, look, I can't go to your facility. I'm breaking Bartonville zoning. The only other option for that horse owner is to transport that horse to an equine hospital. Okay. Trailering of horses is mentioned as an equine activity here again. So do I tell the person, hold on, you cannot transport your horse because of the hours you've just mentioned? It doesn't conform. It's a federal offense to put an animal on a trailer that's in a distressed state, could have a fractured limb, has an open wound. I get prosecuted. I would lose my license if I issued a travel certificate to an animal that wasn't fit to travel. Okay, and all the issues that would require that animal to travel into a hospital for treatment because I cannot treat them in the barn would fall under that category. The second thing is shoeing horses. And I don't know, I didn't know there was a time on this, but some of the stuff.
They allow 3 minutes. Just, could you
Some of
finish-
this stuff is extremely relevant because it's
Finish your sentence.
because it's mentioned. I have a few very important things. The shoeing of horses. We're in Texas, it's 105 Fahrenheit. It's very hard for people to get farriers nowadays to treat horses because of the stress of the job. No farrier wants to be putting on hot shoes at 1 o'clock in the day in a barn in Texas. Most of that's done, farriers are on site in the morning at 5 and 6 a.m. or they come late in the afternoon when it's cool. It's both for the horses and for the people. Okay. The training of horses. I have a hospital down at Lone Star Park. That's my hospital where I'm based out of. It's a huge contentious issue, even horse racing during the summer. They have to finish their season before it gets too hot because of the stress of the animal, and the racing is done at certain hours to make it less stressful. Those horses are done training in the morning at 7:30. They're done. They're not even being exercised. I guess I'd like to understand when these zoning changes are made, especially something like this, the group of people that actually formulated all these red marks for looking at the paper, is there any expert input from people or who makes these decisions? It seems a little bit scary that this was only brought to my attention a week ago. And even my livelihood is affected, not even me living in the city limits. The fact that I cannot treat horses between 7 p.m. and 7 in Bartonville is shocking to me. And it's actually shocking that it's on paper and that it has to be defended. It makes me think that however these ideas were put down and formulated, that it was poorly thought about. And I think it's a little bit risky that these things are done behind the scenes in government, and then the ramifications are extreme.
Well, the P&G had a hearing January the 5th, and that was an open public hearing for people to come and speak.
What expert input from these certain areas, like when the definition of a treatment of an animal, how could that be justified as being between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.? It's shocking that made paper.
We appreciate your input. We're going to look over this again, certainly a lot of these things, because that's why we're continuing this on to February. We're going to be looking at this again.
Okay.
And I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Right, and even as a private owner, if I want to keep more than 5 or 6, or if I want 6 horses and I have a cold spell like we had in February, do I have to leave one of those horses in the pasture and only house 5 of them? Like if I have 5 antique cars that I pride myself in, can I have to keep 5 of them in the barn and 2 of them have to stay out in the sun? I mean, there's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
And really 3 minutes doesn't, you could be here for an hour talking about it.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Giovanna O'Brien. Hope I didn't mess your name up too bad.
Siobhan O'Brien, 875 Porter. As you mentioned earlier, I was able to send a letter. And I recognize that there were open meetings, and that's fabulous. The time of year in November, December is hard. So I do try to stay active with the town, and I apologize for missing those. But kind of the same points that David just made. I went through the CUP process. I have a commercial facility on Porter Road. As you mentioned, horse care in general, riding. So as a trainer, I'm usually on my first horse at 5:30 or 6 in the summer because it's hot. And get heat stress. So I think there are things in here we need to consider. It sounds like you're open to considering those, but my question is, how do we provide input during the next 30 days of consideration? Is there an opportunity for those of us with expertise in an area to be part of the next P&Z discussion? What can we do to make sure the feedback gets to you? And then second, although I am a commercial facility, I have many friends in the area that are private, and I'm confused about the 5-stall reference as well, because I know people that have 10 acres, so by statute, they can have 18 horses. Why could they only have 5 stalls? So I think that needs to be clarified. And then going to the grandfather clause, how do we, so will it be explicitly written, Ed, in reading some of this information, there's may and allow and could, and those are words that make me nervous when it comes to legal terms. So can we make sure it's written clearly that if at some point in the future I choose to sell, they will follow the same rules that I worked so hard getting?
Thank you. Questions? I'm sorry, are you done? Are you finished? I'm sorry.
I am done. Yes, I wasn't sure if there was a question.
Thank you. Danny Mims?
So long since I have talked to city council, there's only one of you that cussed Clay Sams that I know. The rest of them are new to me.
State your name and address.
I am Danny Mims. I live at 1389 Broom Road. I own about half of the north side of Broom Road. I am Hidden Lake Farm. I'm an old Vietnam vet. Silver Star, Bronze Star, 3 Navy Commendation Medals, and 3 Purple Hearts. 50 years ago, we were a bunch of Billy badasses, and I hate to say that all 7 of my original crew came home to a box one at a time. So I had anger issues for a long time, but I'm over that now. I like to be behind the scenes. I like to be soft-spoken, but I do carry a big stick. Okay, I moved to Bartonville in 1978. At that time, the city council and mayor was nothing but a kind of members of a country club. They did nothing. They met at somebody's house. They had coffee and drinks and bullshit and did their thing. But then we had a couple of people in Bartonville that decided they wanted to really make money on their property. So they got their buddies on the town council to make a new zoning ordinance, and they made the commercial corner up here. And J.C. Price, Bartonville store, was the one that benefited the most, and da-da-da. So very quickly, we got a new city council. And I worked with that city council, with certain council members and P&Z members and members of committees, and I helped craft the original zoning ordinance and building codes. And in that zoning ordinance, it says very specifically, there is no commercial development on residential property. And this says commercial equestrian facility. You cannot have a commercial equestrian facility on a residential area. So that needs to go away. You cannot have it. And the definition of a home business, which is allowed in residential areas, is that is by the resident owners and their family with no employees. That's the definition of a home business. And that's already on the books. And it's been there for 35 years. A big commercial facility could be owned by somebody in California. Absentee owner. They got to have staff. They got to have managers, secretaries, barn managers. Unless they have a real good IRS attorney, then their trainers and barn help are going to be employees as well. And guess what? That's not allowed in a residential area. So there's your ace in the hole right there. You don't need all this junk. You don't need it. It is what you would call superfluous. Okay. The rest of the people here are going to give you the carrot. I'm going to give you the big stick. I'm going to lower the hammer. The equestrian community is the largest voting bloc in the town of Bartonville, period. And if you pass this kind of garbage, you will no longer be sitting in those seats when your election comes up. That's a promise. That's not a veiled threat. That's just a promise. We vote, and this is not going to pass.
Thank you. Greg Peck?
Greg Peck, I live at 150 Hidden Oaks Trail, Bartonville, Texas. And just one thing, if I could just get a clarification, what is an ordinance?
Ordinance is a municipal law.
It's a municipal law that is enforceable.
It is.
So how do you partially enforce an ordinance?
Same your question.
Well, if you're saying that this only applies to future residents that are coming here or that are commercial facilities that come here. And it says it started off, the part of the challenge that I had with this whole thing is it started off with this is for private and commercial when it lists out the agenda item. And my concern is that you start one place and it will evolve. Because an ordinance can either be a tool or a weapon. It depends on whose hands it's in and what it's being used for. So if I am having a fight with my neighbor, I can have too many flies in my house and I can make 2 complaints and make their life very, very difficult. If I have a fight with my neighbor, when they turn the music on in the arena when they're riding, even though I can barely hear it, I can have a complaint and use that. So there's a number of things. So I sent to the town council basically the questions that I had here, but some of the things that I was also that I wanted to just make sure that we're clear on is how many CUP permits have been requested in the last year.
Have those numbers off the top of my head.
Just give me a gut feel. Do you think it's 1, 2, 3?
Are you asking specifically about equestrian centers or just in general?
Commercial CUPs for equestrian activities. How many have we had to deal with?
I've been here since October.
So over the last 2-3 years, I'm guessing we're looking at probably at the most, Ed, you've been in most of these meetings. What would you say? Maybe 3 or 4?
I don't know. I haven't been counting.
So
if that's
here-
a number that's comfortable with you, that's fine.
Yeah, but anyway, but the key point is we are making something that can impact our whole community. For 4 CUPs in the last 3 years, that isn't a major problem that our community is terribly worried about. I mean, the veterinarian that was talking, you need to have people that are on this committee that are horse owners, that are current riders, that they compete in the equine industry. You need to have animal care professionals that are here. Can I get just 3 more minutes? Couple more? Okay. The other thing is you need to be talking to breeders and trainers because it's all those things that make up your equestrian life. And it's not about us. Real candidly, it's about the horse. If you're not paying attention to your horses and you're not taking care of them, all you have is yard art that you can't do anything with. So it's really having laws and stuff that make this a positive thing. There's a number of things that were in there, like the town engineer. You know, what's a dust-free parking facility? If I park on grass, that's dust-free, but is that adequate? So there's all these things that were in there that was, you know, an applicable building, you know, building health and fire code. I wasn't sure what a healthy barn is. I've been in some that are just dirt floors that are fantastic. I've been some that are like Taj Mahal, but it really doesn't, you know, from that standpoint, it's just, there's so many things that were in this guidance that's here. Number one, I appreciate the committee. I talked to Gloria, I talked to some of the other people that were part of it, and I tried to get a better understanding of it. I think there's been good work put in here, but I think we're trying to solve a problem that we don't have. So my challenge to you guys is to not keep on moving forward on this thing. I don't think it takes a whole lot more time to get this thing figured. figured out. The reality is, we don't have a problem. Let us live and let us move on.
Thank you. Time being 8:12, we'll close the public hearing.
We need to, excuse me,
Go
Madam
ahead, sure.
Mayor Pro Tem, we need to leave the public hearing open so that we don't have to renotice this for the
Okay.
next meeting.
Leave the public hearing. Okay.
So let's leave the public hearing open. And if it's time to
Make a motion.
make a motion, I can give that to you.
We went through all of the forms, but I may have missed if there was an offer for anybody else to speak that didn't submit a form, since it's a public hearing.
You can ask that.
Yeah, if anybody else wants to speak, please submit a form regarding this agenda 5. Item number 5. Sure.
1200 Rockgate Road. In December, my husband and I bought Rockgate Equestrian Center. And so now I'm getting this information, which is confusing to say the least. And I agree with the last speaker. I don't think there's a problem either. I just hope that, you have our best interests in mind moving forward, because we're excited about coming to Bartonville. And, I consider it the best equestrian area there is. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to keep the public hearing on the item 5 open and move to postpone this item to the next town council meeting, February 15th, 2022 at the church.
Have a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Just leave it open. Okay.
So can I ask a question about this, though? Is that okay?
Sure.
So between now and the next meeting, what are we gonna do? Like, there's been feedback from the town.
Right. So my plan was to review that feedback with what the provisions say and then provide you a memo.
Do you think we have an opportunity to invite some of the folks from the town to give feedback, or do you think you have enough to do what you need to do? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Ed. I'm just saying, I felt passion. And,
Sure.
and I said at the Denton CAD meeting around ag, and it was a disaster, right? And I just don't want this to turn into the same thing for Bartonville on something where we had the right intention, but it may be perceived in the wrong ways when it was not what we had intended at all.
Well, y'all are the bosses here, so there's a couple of things you can think about doing. One would be to maybe have a work session so that it's just an opportunity for y'all to talk through things. If other people want to come up, talk through things, that's an open public meeting. And so if it be noticed, 3 days notice and that kind of thing, put it on the website. That's an option that could provide some more dialogue. I think would be probably the easiest thing to do. That way it provides this room, and the space, and the opportunity to talk about things more than what we've done tonight.
Public work session.
I feel like we probably need that, and I'm happy to participate. I'm also happy to let the audience know that our intention is to be more clear on what it means to have equestrian center. So we have motives, but I want to know where we're missing the mark if we get to a spot, because it's the idea is to create clarity around new folks that move in. It's not to screw the people that live here. We all live here for a reason. I mean, that was the whole intent, and I think some of that got lost in it. So I'm happy to participate in a session to listen, because I want to make sure we get this right.
I would too. I was on the, the equestrian committee, and it was months and months and hours and hours of research nationwide in, big towns, small towns. And our intent, my intent, I want to speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure, was to serve y'all and protect what we have. That is just always been in my heart to protect. I moved here as well for the country, for the horses. I love it all. I do want to say too that I really appreciate you guys being here. I wish it was like this every month. So for that, thank you. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for being spot on, having your remarks ready. And I don't know, it was brilliant. And I just really appreciate your feedback. So I look forward, honestly, to continue. It's all about serving you and it's all about learning, I think. And yeah, just want to let you know. So I appreciate y'all. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for participating. Appreciate it. Okay, we're ready to move on. Any other questions?
Tonight is with the search for clarity. I think we all agree that that's something that obviously there's misinformation out there, and I too was part of. There's a number of people of the meeting that happened with DCAD. We don't want to duplicate that, but at the same time, we want to issue the clarity, and I think we have work to do. So it's time for us to at least take another approach and see what we can do with that.
But that was a big part of it, was trying to clean up ambiguity and create clarity. I think we've done some first steps, but obviously we're clearly not there. I'll echo what's been said. We appreciate all the information and all the points that you guys shared and the emails that you sent over and stuff before too. So it does help and we are listening. So thank you.
Yeah, one last thing. It's a balance between clarity, I think, what we're trying to do, and regulation without over-regulating. Again, it's country, it's horses. You can't really regulate a horse. It's if that makes sense. So know that we're really looking for that balance that works for everybody, because you make Barton. That's it. I'll be quiet.
Is there anything that you would like for staff to do as far as obtaining additional feedback, or we can send out additional, we included this in a news blast and I know in the mayor's article last month, but is there some other method that you would like for us to collect feedback in advance of a meeting to try to work through some of it, or consolidate comments or that sort of thing? Or do you want to just try to?
I think consolidating the comments we heard tonight's great, because we heard some really good feedback tonight. I think.
I think in addition to that, it's having a date set up and communicating it where folks can come in and we can kind of spend a couple of hours talking about
Work session.
yes
Mhm.
and doing that.
Maybe set a
and make
date for
sure we
work
get it out
session.
there.
Yes, please.
The date in mind, or do you just want us to follow up with you on availability after that?
Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central. I'm just
At least 72 hours notice.
just kidding.
Yeah, let's pick a date.
That's why I wondered if we were already going to be at the church next month for the public hearing, if you would like to use that form or post something in advance of that as a work session, if that was your concern.
I think we need to give the town
Evening.
a couple weeks notice so folks can make arrangements to show up. But then, we've talked about this, and in fairness to us in the town, this has been an agenda item for months. I get that it hasn't maybe been consumed, but it's been out there. So let's give the town a couple weeks, 3 weeks notice, and we put it out there. We meet and we go. And folks that are here are passionate. They hear us talk about it. So hopefully they show up and let us know what they think.
So like February 1st.
For me.
February 1st. We can use the church that evening. 7 o'clock.
So you're looking at the second week, maybe, or maybe the second week in February. What are you looking at?
February 1st is 2 weeks from tonight.
Our staff to look and see what's available, so it doesn't conflict with any other meetings that we've got moving on. Make a determination and poll, see what's available. Council.
Send out an email. Yeah.
They 2 weeks notice to see if they can make arrangements. Yeah, they're scheduling to have this conversation.
Well, we'll do some sort of, once we have a date selected, email blast out, newsletter or something. Okay, the town's public hearings and notices page. we'll keep record of any upcoming public hearings such as this, and so we'll make sure to put that on that page as well, just in case. Yep, and sign up on the website for email newsletters from town if you are.
And I do see Tim House here, so he was gonna provide food. Why go? Oh, sorry, Tim. All right. Didn't mean to sign you up for that.
Hey, you talking?
Speaking of Tim, item number 6, the next item to discuss is consider approval of a performance agreement between Bartonville Community Development Corporation and Blue Pub LLC for a grant for the Bartonville store. Staff?
Leave, you gotta stay and hear this presentation. This is really cool. You guys are gonna something really neat.
I'll
Oh,
believe in
well.
you, Tim.
Tim, so.
I
I know, that's
You can clear a room.
so, on. We'll wait till class. I'll do staff report before I tell you that.
Staff presentation.
Just waiting till it quiet down. Tim House.
Hi, Harry.
As you all know, on behalf of Blue Pup Pub is the Bartonville store. He submitted a grant application to the Community Development Corporation for a facade grant. His initial request, he had a rendering of some depictions that he had an artist draw up. He attended the first meeting. After some discussion, he came back with some different different options and with a different artist for a photograph rendering, which is in your packet on page. You want to look at it. I hope I included it. So on page 62 is a copy of the rendering of a photograph that we believe was taken in the early 40s. Tim can give you a little bit more information about that. The Bartonville Community Corporation did approve the grant request, and last night they had a special meeting and approved the performance agreement. The performance agreement is standard performance agreement that they've approved in all of their other types of requests. This one particularly, they approved $9,900 towards the mural. And at last night's meeting, there's a lot of people here, we got a lot of papers. I'm just gonna go over some, there are some information in there that I'm sorry. I distributed a copy of it to each of you. Really the highlights of it is that if he closes his business within 1 year, it's a 3-year agreement. If he closes within 1 year, that he'd be responsible for paying back 2/3 of that. If he closes within 2 years of the agreement, he'd be responsible to pay back 1/3 of that amount, so $6,600 or $3,300. Another is that he will continue to maintain a full-time equivalent of employees of 10. And additionally, that if he makes any changes to the mural, that he would need to get approval from the Bartonville Community Development Corporation prior to doing so during the term of the agreement. That's pretty much it. The budget for the Community Development Corporation for grants for the fiscal year is $80,000. And so it's well within their budget. I think that's all I have from the staff's report for community development. And Mr. House is here to discuss it a little bit further.
Speech, Tim.
Thank you for the time tonight. I just want to remind people what we're trying to do is help people remember the history of this town. We appreciate being surrounded by suburbs, but this is a town and was before all these suburbs were here. And this mural is intended to remind people that the store has been here a long time. It's actually been here since 1882. The store facade that's going to be shown on the mural is a 1940s vintage. We chose it just because it's a more interesting image than the other ones. Anyway, I appreciate your help on this, and I think it'll be something that will remind people that this town has a history.
Thank you. Looks good.
Yeah.
That's great.
There is not a horse
We
on
got
that. On
that.
that building. We need to add that.
That's right.
We can
Gotta
amend the
get some
agreement to add a
outside.
horse.
Staff discussion. Council discussion.
Staff. council.
Tim, I want to say, well, I'm speechless. When I first saw this a couple of days ago, I started drooling on myself because my relationship goes back 40-something years with Ronnie Brown. And when I heard that, it touched my soul. But more importantly, I've seen pictures of being around Ronnie of back in the days of something similar to this when the cotton's in, but a lot of these pictures have disappeared. But what I'm saying is that you are the proud owner of Lot 1, Block 1, Bartonville, and what an awesome display on the side of that building for citizens, passerbys that come down McMakin, and gosh, the chief's got the numbers on how many tires go down that road, and every one of them coming back is going to see that. Thank you. And if something happens, if I'm around long enough, if anything happens to that store, we need to put it in writing that you're going to cut the side of that facade off before they tear that building down and put it someplace where the citizens can all look at that come after us to remind them that this is what it once was.
I hope you'll knock on the Formica up there because it has burned down twice. The store has, you know, so
There you go.
we're trying to
But-
preserve it this time.
But anyway, I want to thank you personally for what
No,
you're doing.
Thank you.
We're having a discussion today, trying to figure out how to set up a time lapse camera so we could
Oh,
get while it's being
yeah.
painted. So before, during, and after.
Awesome.
Like we've got the water tower on the
Are you gonna do
on the
that?
website. We
Cool.
talked about it. So if we can figure out a way
Oh,
to do
yeah,
it,
yeah,
we'd
yeah.
really like to do that to put it in history.
I know that the CDC at least saw some of this artist's work in other places, but being a resident of San watched out of.
That's so cool.
When you look at the side of an old building that's just plain, painted white or brick, and then you just watch him create these works of art over the course of, 1 or 2 weekends or, maybe 10 days. And it just goes from, nothing to sketch. And then you just kind of watch it get filled in. They're amazing to look at in person. People stop constantly, take pictures. The closest one I think here is probably the one in Justin that he just finished, just right off of 5th Street in Justin. It's a train on the side of the building.
That's awesome.
Building. So if you get a chance to look at them in person, they're amazing. So
My husband's already asked when it is the less busiest, so he can park his car there, get a photo shoot.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Let me just add that Mr. Davenport, based on tonight's meeting, intends to start February 20th unless there's some sort of weather
awesome.
issues. It'll take him about 10 days to do it.
Wow,
So
That's
Great.
awesome. How exciting.
Do we have a
How
motion?
exciting.
Yeah, I want to make a motion.
We'll let you.
I want to move to approve the performance agreement between the Bartonville Community Development Corporation and the Blue Pub LLC for the vacate grant for the Bartonville store.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Motion carries. Future agenda items. Does anyone have any agenda items for upcoming meeting?
I do have the request earlier regarding the appraisal district, and maybe we'll clarify some of what has transpired so far in the ag exemption discussions and kind of everything related to that topic. We also have an upcoming public hearing, on a couple of different topics. One is to amend the ordinances related to sign placement for public hearings. Right now, the town staff are putting signs out for public hearings, and we're asking the applicant be responsible to do that. And then the other one is for a request for a new and unlisted use for an automated car wash, which is not a use that is currently listed in your land use table. So we'll have a discussion at the next meeting about a definition for that use, which zoning districts you would like to consider allowing or not, not allowing that use, whether it would be permitted by right or by conditional use permit. So right now it's not listed at all. And it is requested by the applicant that you consider that new and unlisted use. So it'll go through the planning and zoning commission and then town council next month.
That go to P&G first?
It will go to the
Excellent.
planning and
Probably
zoning
already said
commission
that. Okay.
first and then come
Great.
to you.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that public hearing information will be up on the website probably by
Okay.
tomorrow.
I got two things.
Mhm.
Can we get a road update from the engineer?
It is also on the agenda.
Okay, so
I'm
that's
sorry, I
one.
didn't go through this. Yes.
No,
Yes,
okay,
Town
great.
engineer will be here at the next meeting.
Okay.
Also, that will be at the church. It sounds like we'll have a big crowd.
Okay.
So everybody will get that update on there's a work order that's been issued for crack sealing. But before any other major work is done, we want to have a discussion with the council about direction on how you would like to spend the funds that are allocated in this year's budget and how to allocate going forward. So
Yep.
that's all planned for
Okay.
next month as well.
And then the second is tied to roads. And I know I heard from the mayor on this, but quite honestly, I'd prefer to hear from the town engineer. Options on stop signs, options on what flexibility do we have to curtail speeding through some of our high fly zones? Because we have a lot of high fly zones, right, chief? We do. And if we don't have options, I think we need to let the community know that our hands are tied based on whatever. But I mean, this comes up all the time. I just think maybe I shouldn't say public hearing, but just some type of conversation around what truly are options based on TxDOT, based on DPS, or whatever the ruling parties are around options we have around curtailing some of the speeding through our communities.
Time being 8:32, meeting 33, 8:34, 8:34, the meeting's adjourned.
I'm like, oh.